Hello and welcome to the SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So, in this episode I will be discussing the 2009 science fiction movie Star Trek, which actually marks the 11th theatrical outing for the Star Trek franchise. So, directed by J.J. Abrams, this movie sort of served as a reboot to the Star Trek movie series, whilst really at the same time also allowing the Star Trek franchise to continue in what I think is a new and exciting way. So to note, this movie does not feature the cast of the original series, nor does it feature the cast from the Next Generation TV series, or any other TV series. It is a completely new cast and new vision, charting the origins of Captain Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise, as we know them from the original series, but played by different actors altogether, and given an interesting slant, I thought, that I certainly wasn't expecting the first time I watched it. So, a bold move, I thought, perhaps. But one thing that I think did work very well to rejuvenate the series, at the very least, and spark a new interest in all things Trek. You've got to at least admire it for that. So, as a disclaimer, I will probably give some spoilers for this film and others in the Star Trek series, so please do switch off now if you don't want to hear any of those at all. Please do come back though, when you've watched the films, let me know what you think. Please do finish the review, but otherwise, yes, there may be spoilers, so you've been warned. So, in this film, we are introduced to the starship Kelvin, which finds itself and its crew in a very precarious position with an imposing craft which kind of just appears as if from nowhere. The craft identifies itself as the Romulan mining vessel Narada, as captained by Nero, as played by Eric Bana, looking for Admiral Spock. Nobody on board the Kelvin knows of Admiral Spock, which then, kind of upon learning the stardate, leads Nero into an absolute frenzy, who then proceeds to destroy the Kelvin, but not before George Kirk, as played by Chris Hemsworth, takes up the captain's chair and gives the ultimate sacrifice to buy enough time for everybody on board to escape, including his heavily pregnant wife, Winona Kirk, as played by Jennifer Morrison, who has her baby right in the midst of all the turmoil, who of course is none other than James T. Kirk, who is born literally in the moment of his father's death. We discover that the Narada has been caught in a black hole and has actually travelled back in time, and so its presence in the past and its attack on the Kelvin kind of kickstarts this new timeline to be formed, something which has become known affectionately by fans as the Kelvin timeline. This was the film's way of introducing the characters we have known and loved for so many years, but introducing the freedom to then take on a completely different route, allowing the creators the ability to deviate from the existing Star Trek universe while still technically being part of the overall canon. So, we then fast forward to see James Kirk as a young, angry and rebellious adolescent, signifying that his path to Starfleet and his passions have kind of been sent sideways, skewing his life from the path it was supposed to be on, as a result of the events many years prior on the Kelvin. But that his adventurous nature and his penchant for disobeying authority were still there. We then catch up with Kirk again a number of years later, this time at a bar, where he tries to chat up Natoya Uhura, as played by Zoe Salander, who's a cadet in Starfleet. Some other cadets take umbrage with Kirk and not wanting to back down from a fight. Well, this, however, is all witnessed by Captain Christopher Pike, the original captain of the Enterprise, and or at least one of the original captains of the Enterprise, if I've spoken out of turn. Correct me if I'm wrong. So he undertakes the role initially in the film at the very least, as played by Bruce Greenwood, who challenges Kirk to be a better man and live up to his father's legacy, which does then see Kirk kind of rise to the challenge and enlist in Starfleet Academy, where he meets and befriends one Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, as played by Carl Urban. Jump forward again, and I promise, it isn't as convoluted as I'm probably making it sound. For an origin story, one of the nice things actually about this part of the film is that they don't dwell on any one part in an attempt to push right through, and they get us into that space as soon as possible. And for its efforts, it's punchy. It is really easy to follow, I promise, for the most part. So we now catch up with Kirk taking the Kobayashi Maru test for a second time, but with a very nonchalant attitude. Now, the Kobayashi Maru test is significant to Kirk's history. It's especially mentioned in the second film of the entire series, The Wrath of Khan, in that it was an unwinnable test. Kirk, however, changed the parameters of the test so that he could win. He never liked no-win scenarios, a philosophy which kind of featured very prominently in his style as a captain. The significance of this in this movie is that originally Kirk was congratulated for his ingenuity. In this version of Star Trek history, he is reprimanded for his actions for cheating. It just goes to further reinforce the different paths these characters, especially Kirk, are actually on from those that they're originally destined to follow. However, this hearing is kind of cut short when a distress signal is received from the planet Vulcan. Nero watched the destruction of his home planet, Romulus, when the neighbouring star went supernova. Nero blames Spock, as played by Zachary Quinto, and the Federation as a whole for not acting sooner to assist the Romulans and save their planet. Of course, which hasn't happened yet. But in any event, he wants to see Spock suffer for the same way and resorts basically to the complete destruction of Vulcan. Distraught and without hope, Spock, now in charge of the Enterprise, disagrees with Kirk's belief that they should go after Nero and put a stop to his actions there and then, instead of reuniting with the rest of the Federation fleet. For his very vocal disobedience, Spock banishes Kirk from the Enterprise and exiles him on a nearby planet of Delta Vega, which, by and large, was pretty much one of the best things that he could probably have done. So, I think I've probably said enough about the plot. I'm going to leave it there. It's kind of enough to get the overall feel of the movie and still leave enough left to find out, I think, that I haven't given enough away, if of course you haven't watched the film before. Needless to say, that eventually Kirk does end up back on the Enterprise and in the captain's chair, on a mission to find a way to stop Nero from totally obliterating more planets in his wake. Along the way, of course, we also get to meet further representations of the original crew, including Montgomery Scotty Scott, of course, as played by Simon Pegg, Hikaru Sulu, as played by John Chu, and Pavel Chekhov, as played by Anton Yelchin. So, what I would say is I was very sceptical going in to watch this film when it was first released. I had kind of grown up with William Shatner and Patrick Stewart, and although I hadn't enjoyed The Last Entry as much as I should have done or could have done Nemesis, perhaps as much as I really hoped to, I was dismayed that we wouldn't get to see any further developments from the cast of The Next Generation and kind of close off some of the elements which had been introduced during their time at the helm. I kind of failed to see how they were going to bring the characters which had been so iconically played by the cast of the original series, and so I was apprehensive and almost, dare I say it, determined not to enjoy this movie. But I, of course, went to see it nonetheless. I mean, it's Star Trek, right? From the get-go, however, the movie, well, I don't even know if I have the words to justify what I thought. The beginning alone has to be one of the most awe-inspiring, amazing, but absolutely emotional and tear-jerking beginnings any movie could have. Never mind for Star Trek. It was simply a spectacle to behold, and just kind of set the scene for what was about to come. I think they did an absolutely first-class job of bringing the original characters from the original TV series back to life. I think every single one of the actors portraying the original characters had them down to a T, whilst also adding their own kind of flair and individual take on the role. they retained the qualities of the original, just enough so that you knew who they were supposed to be, but each made them their own, which played really, really well on the screen, especially given the alternative kind of timeline slant. The chemistry between the cast is amazing, especially since this is their first outing, and the amount of screen time and input into the overall story that each of the characters has is fairly well balanced, I think. Particularly given that it's an origin story for Kirk, essentially. But we do get to see quite a bit of Spock's history too. Certainly kind of in coming to terms with the way that he with half human, half Vulcan, with this human side and his emotions, which do play a very large part in the movie throughout. And one of the main things I was apprehensive about was how they would link this into the overall movie series. And I would kind of suppose Star Trek in general. I wanted it to link into that universe so bad. But before going to see the movie, I just could not see how they were going to do it. I honestly couldn't. But, you know, when it happened, wow. In this, I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to spoil it for everybody if you genuinely haven't seen this movie. But when that happened, wow. So, the special effects were, again, just simply stunning. Okay, there was some shaky camera work, designed, I would suppose, to kind of make you feel part of the action. It was a little off-putting at times, but otherwise, if you can kind of get round that, you are treated to shots of the Enterprise like you have never seen before, including, I believe, the Enterprise kind of being built on Earth, which was simply a treat to see, if of course it was the Enterprise. The Romulan mining ship was also simply spectacular too, and very menacing in its appearance and grandeur. I literally had goose pimples upon seeing the fully built Enterprise for the first time, Starfleet's newest and most advanced flagship. The backdrop of space was also brought to life in the most amazing ways, and the whole film just felt like a real labour of love. The action and the story itself were also just simply fantastic, with some kind of real nail-biting and very emotional moments. It really pulled at the heartstrings in a big way. One of the main things in a Star Trek for me, with respect to the soundtrack, which is one of the most important aspects of a good Star Trek movie. The themes, they always help to set the tone of the movie and are commonly used to kind of build up that sense of anticipation at the start of the film. So it was another thing that you may have gathered from my previous Star Trek movie reviews, is that I am pretty much a Jerry Goldsmith advocate through and through. So, again, I was wondering how the theme for this movie would actually play out, especially since this time around it was actually Michael Giacco at the helm, and not having heard any of his previous music, or so I thought at the time, I awaited the theme at the beginning of the movie with much abated breath. But I needn't have worried at all. To pardon the pun, the soundtrack is just literally out of this world. Again, from the very first minute of the movie, you get a real sense that this is going to be a big Star Trek film. As an aside note, I did actually have the honour and the privilege, and I say that now as it's quite hard for me to actually get back across there these days, but I did have the honour and the privilege to see the LA Philharmonic Orchestra at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles play at a kind of like a Paramount anniversary evening. They had lots of different films along the way. We had like Psycho, Mission Impossible, which they were of course very certainly impressive. But the one that really did for me, and literally when they started playing this, and I was absolutely hoping all the way through that they'd do it, the hairs on the back of my neck absolutely stood up and I had shivers down my spine. It was absolutely awe-inspiring to see that. A full orchestra set against a ginormous video screen showing a montage of different scenes and imagery from the movie. One of the greatest movie-related experiences of my life. The music has just some real encouraging and lifting themes that have been written, almost I feel, to fit with the grand nature of the Enterprise so well. From that perspective, it kind of smacks a little of the sweeping orchestral movements that I loved so much in Star Trek The Motion Picture. It also has some real haunting tones kind of mixed in as well, used to convey the Vulcans, which I thought also worked tremendously well. So, overall, an absolutely fantastic and awe-inspiring movie with some simply stunning special effects and a soundtrack to match. Okay, its shaky camera style can be a little off-putting at times, but it's a small price to pay for the absolute visual treat you get in return. It was also a new take on Star Trek, whilst retaining some of the classic elements and kind of matching personas of the cast of the original Star Trek series, with some real fantastic actors who not only captured the magic of the original characters, but also gave them their own flair, which did make them even more captivating and intriguing. There were some great throwbacks to the original movies, and although yes, the technology used in the ships, especially the Enterprise, far surpassed whatever could have been used for the original series, to be fair, the Next Generation and all them, they kept the classic look and the feel of the Enterprise, which it made it feel ever the more nostalgic. There was even a surprise creature from the Wrath of Khan. Oh, so if you can't tell by now, I absolutely loved this film. So I do appreciate, however, it's a bit of a polar, divisive kind of film for many people. That's my stand on it. I appreciate where a lot of people come from with it and what they did to the Kelvin timeline and things like that. But that's just the way I feel about this movie. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button. Please do come back, of course, to SciFirst MovieTalk for more movie reviews, more trailer reactions, and other movie-related episodes. But most of all, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.